Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the EA Global Summit 2020, the virtual conference connecting global EA practitioners. This is Nizam from the EA Global Summit team, and we have Gillian, Director of Sparx Services UK, with us, and she'll be presenting on Introduction to Business Architecture with EA and ArchiMate. Gillian is an expert in ArchiMate, and she has been assisting several clients in UK to implement enterprise architecture practice using EA and ArchiMate. And in this session, she's going to give us a holistic view of, what kind of, how to implement a business architecture practice using EA. For any questions that you have or that you want to ask Gillian during the session, please use our Teams channel to raise it. We'll be sharing the Teams link in the chat window during the session. And please feel free to ask your suggestions or post your suggestions or ask a question or even request for a follow-up or whatever you would like to do. We've been having some great conversations going on in the Teams channel since yesterday, and we have all the EA practitioners available for you in the Teams to whom you can learn and develop as well. So with that said, I would like to invite Gillian to start with a presentation. Thanks, Gillian, for joining, and thanks everyone once again for joining this session.
Hi everyone, I'm very honoured to be presenting at this very first Sparx EA Global Summit, and I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to Nizam and to all of his team for organising this event at such short notice. My name's Gillian Aidens and I'm Director at Sparx Services UK, Hippo Software. We have a lot of expertise in enterprise architect, and we provide training, workshops, consulting and mentoring throughout the UK and Northern Europe, and occasionally further afield. My presentation today is going to provide an introduction to using Sparx Enterprise Architect combined with ArchiMate for business architecture. I suspect that most of you have heard of ArchiMate already, but for anyone who's new to this technology, let me start with just a quick review. ArchiMate's an industry standard developed and maintained by the Open Group. It's a graphical notation for creating enterprise architecture models. The framework consists of 3 core layers and a number of extensions. Working top to bottom, the strategy elements allow us to express strategic thinking and facilitate high-level decision-making and planning. I recently delivered a webinar on this topic for Sparx Systems. If this is of interest, you can find it in their webinar library or on the resources page of our website. The business layer allows us to model our business architecture, the organisation structure, internal business functions and/or processes, and services that we offer to external parties such as customers, partners and suppliers. This is actually the main focus of today's presentation. The application layer lets us document our application landscape, understand interfaces between applications, and show how applications support business functions and processes. The technology layer allows us to model hardware, system software, and communication networks that support our applications. Physical elements allow us to model distribution networks, facilities such as offices, factories, and warehouses, and all of the equipment and materials in use. Implementation and migration elements allow us to plan projects, identifying work packages and deliverables, and plan our migration from current to target architecture states. And finally, motivation elements allow us to justify projects by identifying stakeholders, their drivers, goals, and high-level requirements. ArchiMate is very closely aligned to the Open Group's architecture framework, TOGAF. As you can see from the colour coding, the ArchiMate notation maps to the TOGAF architecture development method and allows us to create all of the deliverables required at each phase. So now let's turn our attention to creating a business architecture model for our fictional company, Flower Power. Flower Power is an established company that grows and distributes fresh flowers to a variety of retail outlets and chain stores. The recent COVID-19 pandemic has hit their business significantly. The board has therefore asked their team of business architects to create a model to help them to better understand how their business operates and how best to prioritise and streamline their business processes. Firstly, the Flower Power business architects create a library of business actors. They create a folder structure in the browser to hold their architecture artifacts such as business actors, business roles, processes and services. And they add a ArchiMate business layer diagram to each of the folders. Business actors can represent a whole organisation or part of an organisation. We can use business actors to model our internal organisation structure, how a company is partitioned into business units, the departments within each business unit, and the teams within each department, and even individual people within each team. However, it's rare to go to the level of individuals in an architecture model, as people come and go and they change roles frequently within an organisation. So we usually stop at the level of departments or teams, as these are relatively stable. We can also use business actors to model external parties such as customers, suppliers and partners. For these organisations, the level of detail that we go to depends on how specific we wish to be when modelling who benefits from our services. Business actors are typically named as collective nouns, such as a department or team name. The Flower Power business architects start by modelling Flower Power's internal organisation structure. Using the toolbox, they add business actors, first one to represent the whole company, Flower Power, and then other business actors to represent each department within the organisation. So the nursery, the sales department, and the distribution team. They also add a separate business actor to represent their external customer, the retailer. Following best practice, the architects add an aggregation relationship to model the whole part relationship between Flower Power and its departments. And they then choose to nest the business actors, as this provides an intuitive visual display for the company structure. So they resize the Flower Power company and pop the departments inside. And notice that EA automatically hides the aggregation relationship, but it's still there behind the scenes. The architects would like to automatically colour code the departments, and to achieve this, they decide to create a custom property using tagged values. From the Configure ribbon, Reference Data panel, they click on the UML Types button and select the Tagged Value Types page. Here they can create a department tagged value and give it some predefined options for each of the departments. They can then select each department in turn, and using the Properties window, click on the Tags tab and add the tagged value. Setting it to the appropriate department. So nursery, sales, and distribution. The next step is to populate the model with business roles. However, before doing this, the architects decide to create a template to ensure that all roles will have the department tagged value added automatically. This will be much quicker than manually adding the tagged value. In the templates diagram, they add a business role and add a tagged value to the business role for department. And they also change the look and feel of the business role to use the icon look and feel by default. They save the template and then tell EA where to find the template diagram. Again, from the Configure ribbon, Reference Data panel, but this time clicking on the Settings button and choosing Project Template Package. They navigate down to the package that contains the template diagram and click OK. Now the Flower Power business architects can start to add business roles into their model. They open the business roles library diagram. Business roles represent a skill or a responsibility within an organisation. This is often very similar to job titles or job descriptions. Again, they are typically named as nouns. Each business actor representing a company, department or team will typically be assigned to one or more business roles. The architects consider each department in turn and add the required roles associated with each. So for the nursery, they add business roles to represent the nursery manager, flower growers, and stock manager. For the sales department, they add a sales manager, and flower seller. For the distribution team, they add a distribution manager, and a delivery driver. And finally, they add an external buyer role, they then resize one of the business roles, select all the business roles and set them all to the same height and width. From the layout ribbon, they ensure that the grid is turned on, and then they can position the roles and neatly align them. Now they have to set the department for each role. So the nursery manager, using the properties dialog, we can choose from the drop-down list and set that to belong to the nursery. Likewise for flower grower and for stock manager. Sales manager is allocated to sales, as is the flower seller. Distribution manager goes in distribution, and the delivery driver as well. The buyer is external, so they don't have a department, so we'll just delete the tag value as we don't require it for that role. An organisation viewpoint can now be created. The organisation viewpoint focuses on the internal structure of an organisation. It's similar to an organisation chart, but also identifies key competencies, authority and responsibility. To create the Flower Power organisation view, the business architects can copy and paste all of the internal business actors from the library. They paste these as a link to ensure that they are reusing the elements from the library. They can also copy and paste the internal business roles. They then create assignment relationships from each department to the roles within that particular area of the business. So an assignment can be created from the nursery to the nursery manager, flower grower and stock manager, from the sales department to the sales manager and flower seller, and from distribution to the distribution manager and delivery driver. Again, to make this look visually appealing and intuitive, they decide to resize the Flower Power actors and to nest the roles inside. So popping the nursery roles inside the nursery as so. And notice again that Enterprise Architect automatically hides the assignment relationships, but they're still there behind the scenes in the model, but it gives us a nice, simple look and feel for our overall organisation view. To make this diagram even more intuitive and appealing, the business architects add a diagram legend to the organisation view. To colour code the department based on the department tagged value and to apply an appropriate colour to each of the different departments. So they click the Apply Auto Colour button at the top of the dialog, and this applies the colour coding. Now, with even just this very small amount of information in the model, the traceability window becomes a really useful tool. From the Start ribbon, desktop panel, we can click on the Design button and open the traceability window. And then if we select a particular role within the organisation, we can immediately see which department that role is held within. And if we select a department, we can see all of the roles that it's assigned to. The relationship matrix also provides a great way to visualize connections between the elements in our model. From the design ribbon, impact panel, we can click on the Matrix button to open up the relationship matrix. We can then drag and drop our business actors folder and set that to be the source on our matrix. And we're pulling out all the business actors from that package, and they are listed on the matrix. Likewise, we can drag and drop business roles and set those as our target, and those will then appear across the top. We set the link type to assignment and the direction, source to target, and all of the relationships that exist within the model will appear in the matrix. From the options button, the architects change the options to highlight any elements without relationships. And EA will color code columns in pink and rows in blue if they're empty. And this allows the architects to spot a gap in their model. At the moment, the retailer and buyer have yet to be connected. So the architects are able to do this using the matrix. They can right-click on the appropriate cell and they can add the assignment relationship between these two elements in the model. They can also save this matrix profile so that it's very easy to come back to this matrix layout at any time. The architects now turn their attention to modelling the company's business processes. They know that they're interested in the time taken to complete each process, so first of all, they decide to create another custom property to hold this information. From the Configure ribbon, Reference Data panel, they click on UML types and select the tagged value types page, and they set up a tagged value called average time, and it's formatted to hold an integer value. They then head back to the templates diagram, where they can add a business process to the template, and in the properties dialog, add the average time tagged value. They also choose to apply this tagged value to the business services as well. And they decide to use the icon look and feel for business services. Saving the template and heading back to populate their library of business processes. A business process represents the internal behaviour of an organisation. Each process groups a sequence of activities carried out in a predefined order. Good practice dictates that processes are named as a verb followed by a noun. Optionally, a business event can trigger a business process, and one process can trigger another. Business roles can also be assigned to carry out each business process. So the Flower Power business architects start by adding their top level, level 0 business processes to harvest flowers, to sell flowers, to dispatch flowers, and to invoice their customers. They connect these processes with a triggering relationship. They also create high-level sub-processes, level 1 processes, For record order, and reserve stock. And they add an aggregation relationship to show that Sell Flowers contains these sub-processes. They then resize their processes and nest the sub-processes inside Sell Flowers. And add a triggering event between the two sub-processes. Tidy up the diagram. Next, the business architects wish to analyse average time taken to perform each process and reflect this on their business processes diagram. They select each business process in turn and set the average time. So harvesting flowers typically takes about 30 minutes. Recording a new order, on average 15 minutes. Reserving the stock takes just 5 minutes, which means that Sell Flowers overall require 20 minutes. Dispatching the flowers takes a bit longer, around about 45 minutes. And invoicing the customer requires, on average, 15 minutes. The architects can now add a diagram legend to auto-colour the processes based on their average time. This legend will look at the average time tagged value. It's applied only to elements related to activity, and ArchiMate processes and services are based on UML activities. They use the numeric evaluation and offer up a number of possible values, assigning different colours to each of the time amounts. Clicking Apply Auto Colour makes the colour coding apply to their diagram. Now the architects can think about business services. They open the business services library diagram. Business services, of course, represent external provision of behaviour to external roles, such as customers, partners, and suppliers. Internal business processes realise or implement these services. The Flower Power Business Architects add flower selling as a business service. And flower delivery service. They set the average time for each of these services. Flower selling typically taking 20 minutes, and the delivery service taking about 45 minutes. Just resize the services to make them a little bit smaller. And again, we can drag and drop the average time legend onto this diagram, and it will colour code the services for us as well. Now we're ready to collate all of this information for each business process or set of related business processes and create a business process cooperation view. This viewpoint demonstrates how business processes realise or implement business services. It illustrates how the business services support external business roles, such as customers. And it also allows us to document the internal business actors and roles who are assigned to carry out each business process. So the Flower Power business architects decide to create a business process cooperation view focused on the sell and dispatch flowers processes. They can copy and paste the business processes from the library diagram. They select sell flowers and dispatch flowers, copy the processes, and again paste as a link to reuse those processes on their viewpoint. They can also copy and paste the business services, and position the services. They can copy and paste the required business actors. So for these processes, it would be the sales, distribution, and retailer actors we require. Again, position those appropriately. And finally, they copy and paste the business roles. The flower seller, delivery driver, and buyer. And position each of the business roles. The architects can now add assignment relationships between the roles and the business processes. So they'd add an assignment relationship from the flower seller to the sell flowers process, and another one from the delivery driver to the dispatch flowers process. They can add realization relationships to show which processes implement which services. They can add a realize relationship from sell flowers to flower selling, and also from dispatch flowers to the flower delivery service. And finally, they can add serves relationships from the business services to the external role. So they add a serves relationship from flower selling to buyer, and also from the flower delivery service to the buyer. And now, to make it look a little bit prettier and add extra information, they can drag and drop the legends onto this diagram. They can pull on the department legend, and they can pull on the average time legend as well. And the resulting view provides the board with a simple graphical representation of their operational behaviour. A set of these diagrams is produced, one for each key business process. And this allows senior managers to evaluate business efficiency and identify potential business processes for streamlining. Of course, where considered helpful, the Flower Power business architects can take each high-level business process in the ArchiMate model and create a detailed process map, perhaps using BPMN, business process and model notation. And then they can link the high-level process to the detailed BPMN process. This is done by selecting the ArchiMate process and turning it into a composite element. We go to New Child Diagram, select Composite Element, and navigate down to find its BPMN diagram. And you'll see the infinity symbol appear to indicate this is now a composite element connected to another diagram. In fact, in the latest version of EA, we can even preview the diagram without navigating down into it, which is quite a nice new feature. Or we can double click and we can navigate down to the BPMN diagram itself. And here we've done the same thing. We've used average time as a tagged value to analyse how long each activity within this business process might take, and to add additional detail into the model. And we've added a hyperlink to navigate back up to the architecture model so that we can easily jump from the high-level ArchiMate architecture model down into the detailed BPMN diagrams for each process. And so that brings me to the end of today's presentation. Hopefully it's given you a good introduction to how to get started with ArchiMate and Enterprise Architect and develop your own business architecture. And perhaps you've been inspired to learn a little bit more about this topic. Hippo Software is currently providing a wide range of discounted public EA webinar training courses in June and July. So feel free to have a look at our public schedule and perhaps join us for a training course. I'm very happy to speak with anyone in the Teams channel and answer any of your questions. Nisam, I'll maybe hand back to you and see if there are any immediate questions for me.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it was a fantastic presentation. And thanks everyone for joining as well. So I've again shared the Teams channel link to let you connect to it. So we have a few questions. The first one was how guidelines are connected to model. So this is from a user, and the question is posted in the Teams as well. But the question was how guidelines are connected to the model.
So I'm not too sure what that question
I think he's referring to notes, but maybe you can have a discussion with him and clarify in the Teams channel, because he's available as well. So I'll park that for now. So there's been some positive comments that it's an excellent presentation as well. And there's another question which is how processes are related to data.
Oh, right. So in ArchiMate, there's a number of different options there. In the business layer, you have the option of creating your own business objects to represent data at a conceptual level and really at a business level, where you might indicate that you're holding data about a customer or about an order or about stock. And just at that very high level, you can connect a business object to a process using an access relationship. So you can say, for example, that the record order updates an order object, and it gives you a good indication just at a very high level of what data is involved in each process and how it's being manipulated, whether it's being edited or used by the process. The arrowhead gives you an indication of whether the data is being updated or whether it's being read. So if it points from the process to the data object, the data is being changed. And if it points from the data object to the process, it's just being used or inquired upon. So you can do that within ArchiMate within the ArchiMate business layer, but there's also options to record data in more detail down in the application and technology layers as well. And then you can create maybe a realized relationship from the application layer to the business layer. Some people like to actually mix and match technologies, a little bit like what we've done here with processes, where we have the high level architectural process in the ArchiMate model, but the detailed process we're using BPMN, and we connect the two together. So some organisations like to use UML to model the data elements because it's more precise and they can add detailed attributes and type information. So it's possible to perhaps just have a conceptual object in ArchiMate, but then connect to a UML data object to show the detail of what's held within the application in terms of information and data.
Thanks, Viren. There are quite a number of questions from Arvind, Ben, Abhi, and all these have been added to the Teams channel. So, you know, I think you can have a more elaborate discussion there when time permits. Other than that, we would like to really thank you for the wonderful presentation, and thanks everyone for joining the session. We look forward to see you all in the next or any of the upcoming sessions in the next 3 days. Thanks once again.
Thank you, Nisam, and very happy to talk to people in the Teams channel.